mousetrap every episode you tried to stream?
Nope, not literally. Come on, you're not a 15-year-old Valley girl. It wasn't literally a mousetrap, Frederick.
Okay,
come on.
figuratively or whatever, or kind of like a mousetrap. How's that? Yeah. Oh, look, you got your chat in there. Very good. And then we'll go in and see. Good. There we go. Okay, let's mute that. Perfect. All right, we're streaming live, gentlemen. We're ready to do the show.
Whew. I'm pumped.
I
hope you have that 5-second delay queued up because I've had a crappy day.
Oh, well.
It actually, with the size thing, it actually does look like we're standing at height level.
I told you. I tried to warn you so you can't say later, Fred, you're going to tell me my head size was different than everyone's. So,
that's fine.
No, it's totally fine. All right, guys. Stand by. Going to start the recording. So what I do, as the TWiP folks know, is I will... I'll do just a quick tease and then pause and then introduce both of you guys. And then we're off into the races to step through TWiP 547. All right, here we go. Stand by. Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. It's the last episode of the year coming your way next. Hey, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Joining me today are two of my friends, photographers. One is a videographer who does some amazing work, and another one is a YouTuber photographer extraordinaire who also does amazing work. And these guys have agreed to come on to grace us with their presences for the last episode of TWiP of the year. Matt Granger in the middle of your screen there. Matt, welcome to the show. What's going on there? You and I have chatted a lot over the last couple months.
Yeah.
What's going on? Introduce yourself. Give us your little elevator pitch of who is Matt Granger.
Oh, I normally just scream in elevators and tell people I'm, afraid of confined spaces. I was going to say you did better on that intro than I did on our last meeting.
Well, because you
called the show by the right name.
You were operating under duress, so we could talk about that a little bit.
I think you did it as good a justice as I could hope for. People probably know me from YouTube. I'm a travel photographer. I run photo tours, which apparently Americans find difficult to understand me when I say the word tours. And photo workshops, shoot for clients, and get to hang out and chat with cool people like you two.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. Well, welcome to the show. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I want to pick your brain about this travel stuff that you do, and I know you've worked out a lot of secret little hints and stuff, so we're gonna talk about that and get into the nitty-gritty. Speaking of travel, Mr. Lee Herbet is also on the show. Lee, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's fabulous to be here, and good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you on again. So you travel a lot. You and I had a little chat earlier this week, and you're doing a lot of stuff, right? You're traveling around, and
yeah.
How is that possible? Like, plus you got a new kid there over there. So he's
3.5, so he's not that new anymore. It's
you can't
doesn't
return
have that
him.
new kid smell.
The receipt doesn't work anymore. You can't return him to the store. So.
Oh, I tried that within a day, and already they weren't accepting that.
Yeah, don't leave him at the fire department. So give us your elevator pitch, man. So what are you working on? I know you're video centric for the most part, but give us your pitch.
I will slightly correct you. I'm not a videographer. I'm a filmmaker, and the main difference between that is a decimal point in my invoices, or a couple if I'm lucky. So what I do is my main bag is I run a production company called Capturing, but in Melbourne, Australia. We do corporate videos for brands and things like that. We're starting to work on some documentaries for film festivals and some TV stuff, which is very exciting. And in my other line of work, I suppose, is I am a Final Cut trainer and a video trainer. So I run workshops mostly for photographers and corporate clients, teaching them on how to improve the quality of the video work that they're doing internally themselves.
Cool. Very cool. Well, we're gonna touch on that a little bit as well. But before we dive into all that, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. You guys are, well, let's start with you, Matt. So you're doing some stuff over on your very popular website and YouTube channel, mattgranger.com. You've got a couple things going on, some tours coming up, and also some workshops and stuff. Tell us a little bit about those before we dive into the show proper.
Sure. So I just launched 3 new tours for early 2019. We've got Japan in March, Laos in April, and then Mongolia for June. And they're all filling up nicely, but happy to get some new people on board as well. And the big thing I want to remind people, I've got, what's the date? 26. So 5 days to get involved.
27.
We're doing... in the future, man. It's based on New York time, though, so you get a gimme on that one. We're doing a big end-of-year giveaway with thanks to B&H Photo, who are helping out. We're giving away a camera or a trip to New York, or someone can win a place on my tour to Laos, and all kinds of equipment. There's like $9,000 up for grabs, and it's free to enter, and everyone can enter, and it's totally random, so enter. That's at the win page.
Very cool. Very cool. And then at mattgranger.com/workshops, that's where if they just want to go sign up, they just go over there and sign up. What's the general length of your workshops? Are these long workshops, 3 days, or, how does that go?
So the workshops, I don't have any listed yet for 2019, but I do normally weekend workshops for lighting, for photography. And then the photo tours are usually 12 or 13 days. We meet in the capital of the country and explore from there and get them back to the capital for their international flight. So they're normally based around so people can do it in 2 weeks of leave.
Very cool. Awesome. All right. Well, if you want to learn more about that, head over to mattgranger.com and, sign up. All right, Lee Herbet, what about you, man? In the notes here, I'm noting that you just got back from somewhere and now you're off again. So you're literally avoiding changing diapers. I think that's.
No, we're actually toilet training at the moment, and no pun intended, it's a bit of a crappy experience. Hey,
it's gonna be that kind of show. I need to get some sound effects in this show.
We were. I was in Cupertino, seems like a lifetime ago, about a month ago. I was teaching at the Final Cut Pro Summit there, which was just amazing fun. Then, because I'm an idiot and I didn't plan things well, I flew back to Melbourne and then flew to Israel to do some shoots for this documentary that I'm working on, and had about 5 days of meetings and just hanging out in Hong Kong on the way back. And then... at the moment, January's not entirely confirmed, but February's looking like Singapore and New York and Arizona. March will be Shenzhen, and I'll be in Vegas for NAB in April, and then possibly late April, Jordan and Israel, and I think that's it so far.
That is perfect. That's a perfect segue. That's a perfect segue into the topic of this show, which is travel tips, right? You guys, both of you, are running around the planet, and over the past 5 or so years, you probably circled the globe many, many, many times. And in those trips around the planet, I'm sure you've had some bad things happen, some good things happen. You've made a lot of lessons. So Matt Granger, let's I want to start with you, and let's just start from the beginning. So part of this whole sort of show, the impetus for the show is selfish, because TWiP is selfish. It's all about me. So that's
good.
I'm just being honest. This is 2019 is honesty. No,
you can just text me, buddy. You don't have to organize a whole show.
It would have been so much easier. No, but seriously. So the first thing that you do when you finally decide that I'm going to go on a trip and you buy a ticket, and the first thing you do the night before, hopefully many nights before you travel, is pack. Right? And you got to figure out what you're going to take. And packing for photographers is much different than packing for, let's say, non-photographers or other people that don't have the things to worry about or don't have a mission on the other end to accomplish. Especially if you're traveling internationally, there's not a whole lot of room for, oh man, I forgot my XYZ thing. So how do you approach that, Matt? Are you structured in that you just have like this checklist in Trello or something online that you walk through, or do you just know in your head what you need to bring, or you keep bags packed at the ready at all times? How does it work in the world of Granger?
Actually, surprisingly, I do have a couple of bags kind of packed, but that's mainly because I live in New York and storage is limited, so luggage needs to be utilized as a storage space.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a little different, probably for everyone, but it really depends on the nature of the trip. So if I'm running a tour, actually, I don't have that big of a gear requirement. But if more and more, I'm now trying to tie in multiple things in any trip, especially if it's a longer one. So if I'm going, say, to Iceland for 2.5 weeks, and I'll extend it to 3.5 weeks, and then also try and do some client work there, I've been doing a series of the last couple of years called Field Tested, where I do a really in-depth review of a couple of pieces of equipment through the year, and that starts to add up. So then there'll be the gear that I need for shooting, and that really depends on the job. Sometimes it could just be 2 cameras, 2 lenses. Sometimes it's drones and all kinds of stuff. But then if I'm filming, it's also the stuff I need to film myself, and then all of the backups, and it really adds up quickly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't, yeah, just talking about that, because I think about that, and when I travel, and I'm not doing anything near the level of what both of you guys are doing, but when I travel, it's like my camera bag is going with me. Got to make sure I get everything that's essential into my camera bag. So if my luggage gets lost, the mission can continue with what's on the plane with me. That's my mindset. But then, Matt, you're mentioning like, oh, well, drones and lighting and all this stuff. You're not taking that on the plane with you. So how do you manage that? Do you check that stuff in, and aren't you nervous, checking that in?
Yeah, you do get nervous for sure, but still the critical stuff I'll take on board. So if it's a little drone like a Mavic or something, I actually do take that on board, and it depends where you're going, but often you need to carry all your batteries with you, whether you want to or not. They won't let you check them in. Yeah. So in terms of gear, flashes, anything with not too many moving parts, tripod, light stands, lights other than the batteries will go into check-in. But then, yeah, anything that's critical for the first couple of days will be in my carry-on, along with the essential changes of clothes if I need something in particular. Yeah. To be honest, that's the main reason that I'm loyal to airlines now, is to be able to get to a high, what do you call it, like a membership
status
level. Yeah. So I didn't want to use that word, but yeah, now that I'm important. Yeah. Even if you're flying the cheapest economy ticket, it means that you can check in the business class lane, and they rarely care too much about your luggage. So often my carry-on will be about the same weight as my check-in.
Wow. And Lee, what about you? When you're packing, you're running around all over the place. And I would imagine from a filmmaker standpoint, move that decimal point. From a filmmaker standpoint, the stuff that you're carrying is much more extensive in a lot of ways than what a still photographer would be carrying. Yeah, how do you manage that? I remember we talked about a year or so ago, and you had this, I think it was this think tank bag that was long enough to put a body in or something. Yeah. Yeah, you can ship yourself in it. Right. Yeah. So how do you manage all that?
So, well, there's lots of little tricks that you can do. So, first of all, I was going to say, Matt's bang on, where try and, if you're going to be doing a lot of travel, just do a bit of research and find out which airline alliance is going to work best for you, where you live and all that kind of stuff. And stay with just one alliance and get status. So, for example, I just got, because I've been doing so much flying this year, I probably shouldn't put numbers and stuff up.
Screenshot it, thank you.
Yeah. So I just got my gold status with Star Alliance. So I now get an extra bag for check-in. I get to use all the stuff that Matt was talking about. So that definitely helps, because they don't give you as much of a look. Having said that, I'll give you a little story. So I was traveling. I was in New Zealand with my wife and my son about a year or two ago. Yeah, he would have been about 1.5 maybe. And in Auckland Airport, as you go to fly out, so you've already checked in. You're now going to immigration. As you walk in, on either side, there's a little lady with a scale waiting there to weigh people's carry-on. And I was there. I was visiting family, but I took a lot of my camera gear because we do that. Yeah. And I was filming some stuff as well, so I can justify anything. And the lady goes, "Oh, let's just weigh your bag." And I put the bag on, and she goes, "Oh, and as she says, the thing just keeps going up. And so the limit is 7 kilograms, and mine was about 18. And she looks at me, she looks at my wife, she looks at my son, and she goes, "It's probably full of baby stuff. You guys just go ahead." So my first tip is if you can get a 2-year-old to travel with you all the time, that's quite useful. But there's other complications. So what I would say in terms of weight is and particularly now, like Qantas and all the airlines in Australia have gotten ridiculously strict in the last month. They've said they will weigh everyone's carry-on. And so I'm actually, this is something I'm having to think about a lot. So what I'm going to start doing, luckily for me, I've got shooters all over Australia. So now what I'm trying to do is I'm going to either borrow or rent gear wherever I'm going, wherever I can. So particularly lights, tripods, things like that. Think of the really heavy stuff, and batteries. If you can have some of those where you're going and you don't have to bring them with you, yes, there's a cost involved, but it's going to save you a lot of stress and anxiety during the travel process.
Yeah, and but the other part of that, weight is one thing, and being penalized either, by saying, hey, you can't come, or you whatever for having too much stuff. But the other part of it that I worry about is just security. Like, I would pay an extra $25 if they're like, yeah, you're over, and I'm like, well, okay, whatever. I'll pay the extra fee. I won't like it, but I'll pay the extra fee. But what I worry about is some rogue TSA agent or whatever the equivalent is in the country that you're flying out of, going through your crap and taking stuff out of there, and you really have no recourse. What do you?
Why you have insurance?
Yeah, what do you, is that just Matt? Is that a risk of doing business? Or is there some safeguard against that?
I mean, it is, but I don't know, when Lee flies to Palestine, you don't want to be cashing in insurance when you needed that bit of gear the next day, right? It gets tough. And tip, if you don't have a 2-year-old, but you do have a woman in your life, most airlines, the rules still say you can have your main bag, an extra small bag like a laptop. A lot of airlines won't weigh you can take that out when they're weighing it. But women also get a handbag. And I've never seen a woman's over-the-shoulder leather handbag get weighed. So that's often got 5 kilos of my batteries in it.
Interesting. Okay.
And another one, and it is, I mean, in a way, you want to be fair, you want to be safe. I'm not saying do anything silly, but it's not really a matter of the safety of the airplane, the weight, because, I'm 50 pounds heavier than either of you guys, but we're paying the same for the ticket, right? So it's a bit silly, but they don't count what you're wearing. So when I see that they're weighing hand carry, I step out of line and put every camera on, put every hard drive in my pockets, put everything on me. And then I let them weigh my empty bag. I'll do it in front of them if I have to, and then repack it beside the scale because it's within the rules.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is a really good tip because and I've heard that before in various iterations where some people are saying get those Scotty vests and just load them down with lenses and all that stuff until you can repack it at the gate or whatever. That's interesting stuff. But I still worry about what is this? I still worry about just the whole security because you put those TSA locks on things and you're like, that's a false sense of security because every person at TSA has a key to those. So that's the whole point of those locks is just to give you a false sense of security. But bringing it back a little bit, Lee, I want to have you chime in on the stuff that you take when you're packing. Right. So you're packing, you're getting ready for the trip. It's the night before, you're sweating, you want to make sure you don't forget anything. We've all been there many, many times. What's your process for making sure that you have the right stuff in your clothing bag and your camera gear?
So I'm not thinking about it the night before. I'm probably thinking about it a week before. And, as Matt was saying, it depends on the job. So, and I'm sort of torn because I'm one of those people, like my wife always makes fun of me that if I could pack the kitchen sink, I would pack the kitchen sink. Like I'm one of those, well, let's bring this just in case kind of people.
Yeah.
but you can't be like that. So think very carefully about the job and think about very much in terms of, are there things that you can use that are going to have multiple uses? So, as much as like I'm a prime snob, I love my prime lenses, I love my fast primes, but could a zoom do the job of 3 primes? As much as I want to take my primes, maybe it's a better idea to just take the zoom with me.
Yeah.
So things like that, and you've got to be really hard with yourself and go, I need to take only what's required for the job. And again, I mean, we're talking about air travel, but then the opposite goes when you're not doing air travel. Like I had a job where it was a 5-hour drive away, so packed up the truck, and it was a game of Tetris to get everything in. I'm pretty sure the truck drove like that because I put C-stands in there. I put 4 sets of lights in there. I put 2 tripods in there. I put there was barely enough room for me.
That scares me. That's like all your eggs in one basket. Because when you say that, what my brain immediately goes to is I have some friends that used to pack like that, like for short trips and load everything into a van or truck or whatever. And then the van gets stolen or vandalized or broken into. Now all the crap's gone,
Yeah, but
shit happens. But you can't hire 3 cars to split it up.
And also, I grew up in South Africa, so I'm paranoid already. So I'm always thinking about that kind of stuff. Regardless, I'll never leave the stuff in the car overnight. If we're going to be having lunch, I park the car somewhere where I can see what's going on with the car. It's one of those where you don't want to live in fear, but also don't be silly and don't kind of go, oh, well, everything will just be fine. So take precautions, but don't live in fear is kind of what I would say.
Yeah, be smart about it. Hey, in the chat, Craig Stampley, one of the TWiP Pro members, says Singapore Airlines is his favorite airline. Do each of you have a favorite? And have you flown Singapore before?
Matt?
Yeah, Matt, why don't you take it first?
Yeah, I think I've flown them all. Singapore's definitely up there for service and food and lounges and everything. My personal favorite's probably Cathay because they seem the most lax. Well, they're good at all that stuff, and they're the most lax on age I've found. And they have direct flights from New York to Hong Kong and to most big cities, which is nice. So that's probably my favorite. Lee?
Well, my first favorite is Air New Zealand, just because at first it was a little bit of, loyalty to them, but they are a fantastic airline. And under that, it would also be Cathay in Singapore because, again, they're really good.
But what about the other side of the coin? Which ones do you absolutely avoid at all costs? You won't fly
any of
them?
the American ones.
Any of them, like American Airlines,
rubbish.
like
American, United, Delta. Like if I'm in the US, I will fly either Alaskan or JetBlue if I can get one of those two.
And why is that? Why? What? Give me a horror story as to why you've come to the conclusion that those airlines suck.
So
I know the answer to it. I just want to hear you say.
So many stories. Look, I find the how do I put this diplomatically? I find a lot of their staff are very honest. If they're having a bad day, they won't hide it.
Yeah.
And I just I find them quite officious a lot of the time. Like they don't, they'll go, right, these are the rules, and I don't care if your nose is bleeding. These are the rules. Whereas I find a lot of other airlines outside generally are quite understanding, and they're reasonable. Where I find very often the US ones aren't particularly reasonable.
Yeah,
they're not willing to.
You're not a customer.
Compromise.
You're not a customer. You're an inconvenience for
exactly.
Yeah, for lives. What about you, Matt? You any ones that you will absolutely not fly, no matter what the circumstance?
Not really. There's some routes that I go that there's really only one option. If you're getting in or out of Mongolia and you don't want to go via Russia, you really don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only airline that I've ever agreed to pay excess baggage, even though I'm always over. Is that it's just that you're not flying if you don't pay it.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's fine. Let's just go pay it, and it ends up being nothing. But my most annoying horror story was in Johannesburg, South Africa, on South African Air, flying from the States to there and then transiting there to go to Windhoek in Namibia. And the lady on the air bridge just said, "I know that bag. It's a heavy bag. You can't take it on."
She weighed it with her eyes.
Well, let's get a scale.
That bag's name is Fred.
Exactly.
Because, I'm like,
We used
I'm
to
thinking,
date.
I have a 600mm lens in here. Yeah, it's overweight, but she doesn't know that. So come on, bring the scales out. Let's do this. And she just let the plane go without me.
What?
So that was fun.
Well, Lee, you need to have a conversation with some of your
I have not been to South Africa in almost 20 years. I'm just disowning that one completely.
Yeah, look at that. Man,
Just winding back to the thing, sorry to interrupt, about choosing the right things to pack. Well, one thing I found really helps, and I'm like Lee, I tend to overpack, fearing I'll forget something. I'll actually now have an idea of how many days I'm likely to be away from a charger, how much we're going to be shooting, and how many batteries, spares, redundancies, hard drives I actually need without overdoing it. So then you can just take, okay, I only need 1 charger and 4 batteries instead of 2 and 8. So then I can take the 4-bay power strip instead of the 8-bay one, and that can actually add up to a fair bit of weight at the end.
Wow.
And also from a video point of view, just on batteries, I'll just pull up some props.
Yeah, go for it.
Video guys have it way harder than us. Apart from the cost of it all, their stuff is just huge.
It's huge.
So
yeah.
So yes, it's huge. So here's a V-mount battery. I'll just hold it to my head so you get the scale.
It's like an old iPod.
So for scale, so it's like a pack of cigarettes then, basically.
No. This is no, this is. I see what you did.
You got it.
Sorry, it went right over my head.
Oh.
Yeah, come down here and say that. We can keep going.
I'll bite your kneecaps off.
Yeah, fly kick to the shins. But what you can do is like, so these are made by Core, SWX. So they make a mini one, and this is the exact same, hertz or whatever it is as the big one. And the thing is, these will run my lights for 2 hours, or they will run my camera all day. Wow. Yes, they're bigger and chunkier, but I just need one of these. Actually, well, I just need 2 of them, and that's 2 days worth of batteries for my camera.
And you're set. You don't have to worry about AC, nothing. Yeah, that's cool.
That's it. So yeah, they're bigger and they're chunkier and they take hours to charge and all that kind of jazz. But the advantage is you can take fewer of them.
Yeah. Back to the whole favorite airline. Generally within the States, like you guys say, when possible, JetBlue. I used to love Virgin, but Virgin is no more. But I got to tell you, the best airline that I've flown so far has been Japan Air. You guys ever flown on Japan Air? So I fly Japan Air back to Tokyo every now and then, and just the contrast of the level of service, both before you get on the plane and on the plane, versus some of these other airlines that you guys mentioned. Specifically one that comes to mind is like American Airlines, American Airlines and airlines of that ilk, like you said, they just don't seem to care. You go from being a customer to being an annoyance. I remember one of those last flights I took, I was doing a talk in Ohio for Panasonic, and I think I forget the airline. It might have been American. And I fly out there, or I go to the gate, and I had a question, and the 2 gate agents are talking to each other. You guys have been here many times, right? Mm-hmm. They're talking to each other, and you walk up with your roller bag or whatever, and you stand there patiently, and they just continue talking. They won't say, oh, we'll be right with you, sir. None of that. They just continue talking, and until you say, excuse me, and then you get the eyes, like, yeah, can I help you? Like,
what do you want?
Wait, didn't I pay you for me to be here? So yeah, so Japan Air, you don't get that. It's very polite and courteous. At least my experience. Some people may have horror stories, right?
Yeah. Although I will tell a quick story about that. Yeah. I was working on I was shooting footage for a photography workshop in Fiji, and a very well-known photographer who I will not name and shame on here. I'll tell you guys after the show. I was standing in the line with him, and he was bragging about how he travels so much, and he's got all these tricks about getting heavy bags on, and he charms his way, and he does this and he does that. And
me?
No. Could be a lot of different people. And and I was really stressing because, again, obviously my bags were heavier than they should be. And he goes ahead of us, and he got stuck there for like 40 minutes trying to argue. It was actually on a visa problem, and then once the visa problem got sorted, then it was a weight problem of the bags. But thankfully, because they were so distracted with him, myself and my mate Simon, we just walked on through.
Jeez.
Nice.
There you go. Yeah, just carry distractions with you.
That's actually one good one. I used to be the come on and trying to cause a scene, trying to get through. It's the opposite. If you kick up a fuss, they'll just dig in. It's better if you just lean in and whisper and say, look, it's my 2-year-old son's crap and I'm really sorry and I know I'm over, but I wouldn't do this if I... And they're much more likely to let you off if you don't make it into a spectacle.
And I will also say, don't forget these... Everyone's a person, so always be polite to people, and they're just doing their job. And,
it's not always easy though, Lee. I mean, when you're traveling and you just this is your third connection, and you've got 45 minutes to make the next flight, and it's an hour away, and you got to get on a tram to get over to the other side of the airport.
Try doing it while you've got a screaming child and you're covered in urine. Trust me, I know. I know.
Yeah.
But 1 out of the 2 is hard enough.
Yeah. But my thing is I always try and be as polite as possible to them because, you're going to get what you give out kind of thing. And also everyone's a person. I don't want people screaming at me when I'm doing my job, so I try not to scream at other people when they're doing their job.
Common courtesy goes a long way. All right, well, continuing on from airlines, the other piece of that is airports. Right? You guys have frequented lots of airports around the planet. What's your favorite and your least favorite? Lee, why don't you kick us off? What's your favorite airport on Earth?
That's a tough one. Actually, no, it isn't. My favorite airport is Changi Airport in Singapore.
Oh, nice.
Because that place, they take a lot of the stuff that you would normally have to pay extra for and just have it as a feature. So there are free showers. There are free lounges. They have a cinema that plays movies 24/7. They've got an outdoor pool. It's America, take note. It's Singapore. Singapore is just they do it right.
Yeah. All right. Well, Matt, can you match that? What's your favorite?
Phew. I have to say, a lot of the Middle Eastern countries seem to have a lot of cash to splash, so they're pretty well equipped.
Dubai.
But still, I would go with Hong Kong. It's ridiculous. It's so efficient. I mean, I'm one of those first off the plane, first to the luggage rack kind of guys, and the bags are almost always ready there once you get there.
Wow.
Even if you arrive and there's like a line of 100 people you're through in 10 minutes, it's so good. And worst, I don't know. To be honest, probably JFK. One of the American ones.
I got to go. I'm from Chicago. I got to go with O'Hare, man. O'Hare in Chicago. Although they've done some things, and last time I was at O'Hare, I had to fly through there on the way back from Ohio. It was They've done a lot to improve O'Hare, but it's still that experience of, oh man, I got to go through O'Hare. I can't. Can I connect through like Florida or something?
I had the worst experience with an immigration person because I mean, like the whole thing with you never be rude to immigration people because they can just go right. We're not going to let you in the country. And this guy, fair enough, I screwed up. I filled out a form incorrectly, or I filled out the wrong form, or what have you. Fair enough, I had waited 2 hours to get to the front of the queue. Oof. And he just like looks at me and gives me a talking down like he had just found out his wife had left him or something. Like he was grumpy. And sort of sends me, like I've just spent 2 hours and he sends me back to the back of the queue. I'm like, oh, please don't do this. And
yeah. You get a little bit of power, goes to the head. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about camera bags and the things that you because that's our, let me speak personally. From a personal standpoint, I have way more camera bags than I need right now, and I ordered another one yesterday. I'm just saying. So
need should not factor into that sentence.
I know. I will want for sure because there's always something that you want to do. Matt, what's the best camera system for you? You've probably gone through many different iterations, as we all have, and you've settled on what you're dragging around the planet now. What does that look like?
As I was actually going through this list of questions, I thought it's so personal, because even if someone travels with the same amount of crap and travels as much as I do to the similar countries as I do, there's people who just will hate the bags I use and like their own. But it seems like the three of us have enough diversity that hopefully it'll be useful for the audience. Yeah. But I tend to, well, you're right, I have dozens of bags. Luckily, by moving to the States, I had to whittle it down somewhat. But 9 out of 10 times, I'll have my roller bag and a laptop bag that carries everything in the two of them. Mm-hmm. My laptop bag is a pretty big one that has, this kind of space for cables, batteries, all kinds of stuff. And then into my check-in luggage, I'll pack what's going to actually be my day bag, whether it's a messenger bag or a backpack or whatever. And then I'll fill that with flashes or light power strips or just clothing to pad it out. But I've lately been using this guy a lot. Let me just put myself back up so I can see if I'm blocking myself. So just a pretty big messenger. Nice. I don't know. I tend to have, if I'm shooting something that needs a lot of gear, I'll have 2 camera bodies on. So just having a shoulder bag that will take, say, 4 lenses and a flash, rather than having a backpack I have to take on and off, works. So I can just swing it around, change lens, have batteries and cards in there, and that's that. But if it was like a safari or something where I couldn't realistically have my roller in the vehicle with me for the day, then I take a sealed backpack that I can put at my feet.
Matt, any particular brands that you gravitate to or that you're sponsored by or anything like that?
I was about to say I do gravitate, but I have to disclose I'm an ambassador for these guys, Companion bags. So for the leather bags, messengers, and weekenders, I use theirs. My roller, I use a Think Tank Airport Roller Derby. It's a 4-wheel one and phenomenal. I've changed the wheels and handle on it once already, but that was after 3 years of abuse that I think any other bag would have died under. And for my backpack, still my favorite is a now discontinued and relic of the past, a Carter Mini B, which, who are they? Manfrotto make something similar, but it's not as good.
Very cool. Awesome. Lee, what about you, man? What's your camera bag ensemble of choice? I see a pile of them back there. I think they're like gremlins back there. I think they multiplied since we started the show.
Well, I'm glad you can't see the stuff that's lower down and off camera and the stuff that's in the garage. I'm also a bit of a bag fiend. Now, I will disclose it. I'm an ambassador or sponsored or anything, but I do have a relationship with Think Tank Bag. So they're just friends of mine, and every now and again they'll go, hey, can you do a quick promo video? And they send me a bag and I keep the bag. So, full disclosure there. But yeah, my roller, I'm exactly like Matt. I use the Roller Derby because I've found that is, in terms of size, I can fit the most stuff into that, and I can still get it into the planes that no one has ever given me hassle or anything like that. And 4 wheels are just very playful, so I twirl it playfully to try and make it look light. Look, one finger. Oh, this isn't heavy. Don't weigh it. Please don't weigh it.
The photographer's fidget spinner.
It really
Lee,
is.
Show me your poker face when you're trying to lift the 20-kilo bag into the overhead bin so they don't know it's heavy. What's your look?
Oh no,
you got to squeeze the butt so that you just...
Well,
how you doing?
I'm 5'4", so I can barely reach the thing. So I just got to try and make sure none of them offer to help me, because then I'm stuffed. So that's like my camera bag that I use for most things. And then again, very much like Matt, I have a messenger bag that I put most of the batteries in, because again, they're less likely to weigh that, and that actually ends up being the heavier bag. So depending on the airline actually will dictate on which bag I use. So I've got the big retrospective, which looks really cool, and you can fit a 15-inch laptop in it and all that great stuff. And that's if I'm on an airline that's not too fussy. But then if I know that there's an airline that is a bit fussier, I've got the signature bag, which is smaller. I actually prefer the signature. I think it looks nicer, and I really love the clasps on it. Yeah. But it's not quite big enough. Again, if I can get something bigger onto the plane, I will. And then for backpacks, I've got a Backlight 36, which I used to use as my laptop bag, but I got called up on it about 2 or 3 times on a plane, and after that, I thought, not going to risk it, so I don't bring that on planes anymore.
Yeah. Is the corpse carrying bag Frederick mentioned, is that the logistics manager?
Yeah.
That's it. You have that back there? Is that on the floor
No,
somewhere?
no, that's actually that was on loan to me. So I've got the logistics manager 30 and I've got the logistics manager 40.
Okay.
But then the problem with the 50 is you put so much stuff in it you can't lift it. Which was the first time I filled it up and then I went to put it in the car and I was like, oh, so
You gotta hire somebody. Gotta hire somebody.
If you're gonna have one of those bags, have an assistant.
It should have a trailer mount, so you can just put it on your trailer.
Just drag it around. Well, what about, so Matt, you mentioned the companion bag series, and that one messenger bag that you were holding up there doesn't look like any sort of camera bag by design, I would imagine. Is that important to you? You know, traveling to some of these exotic locations, that you have a bag that doesn't look like it has expensive stuff in it?
I don't know, to be honest, because, and I was actually thinking the opposite when we were reminded of a chat you and I had when we met in Oakland.
Yeah.
When Lee said, I prefer this one, it also looks nicer. Bags are something that even the most utilitarian, I just need it to get the job done, manly men photographers still don't mind having a bag that looks cool.
Yeah.
Whereas, having a camera that is more than just functional, they think is a bit of a wank.
Right.
But
right.
So I think these are gorgeous, and I don't think having a beautiful leather bag fools anyone into thinking you don't have nice stuff.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
No.
Well, you have to beat it up and distress it a little bit, right? Put some duct tape on it, put some fire to it. Right?
Oh, this is pretty.
Yeah, it's pretty, but in some areas of the world, it's like, that's pretty, and that could feed my kids for the next 6 months, right? So,
yeah, but like Lee, the more you travel, the more you get aware of that stuff. So same, where were we recently? Probably in Oakland, parking where you can see the car at all times. It just becomes you become aware of that stuff. And I know there is a link between crime and poverty, but it's not that direct, I don't think. Most places I travel in the world that are third or developing world, I don't feel unsafe. You go to the wrong street in any city and you feel, okay, I should go back on the main road.
Yeah, target. All right, let's switch gears. Look at this. We're 6:41 already. See how quick these shows go? And we're only like a third of the way through the questions. We're not going to finish all these. I wanted to talk about booking and how you guys manage that piece of your respective businesses. Are you using Travelocity, Expedia? Do you have a person that you can just dial up and say, hey, I need to go to Outer Mongolia, make it happen? Or do you handle it yourself? Do you sit on the couch with your laptop and book all your travel yourself? Lee Herbet, how does that come to fruition for you? Do you do it yourself, or do you have people to do it for you?
A little bit of both, actually. So I actually enjoy researching flights and working out the best route and how I could do the seats and all that kind of stuff. Although my wife has said after I booked our honeymoon that I'm never allowed to do that for us again. But that's another story.
Who booked your trip from Cupertino back to Melbourne?
Oh, that was me, but that's because the second one was booked before the first one happened. So the second one was booked, and then the Cupertino job came in after the Israel and Hong Kong trip. So also the Hong Kong and Israel one was with my wife and my son. If I said to her, "I'll meet you in Israel, you fly all the way by yourself with him," I would have not been meeting anyone there.
Yeah.
So, so I research that stuff myself because that's something that I enjoy doing. But most of the time when it comes to booking, again, I'm very lucky because I've done quite a lot of work with a particular travel company over here. And so they've sent me out on a lot of shoots internationally. And so I've got someone there that I can just call up and go, hey, I've just been looking at these and these flights. Do these look right? And is there a difference if I book them or you book them? And then they'll tell me, hey, we can save you a couple $100, or now you just book it yourself. Don't worry about it. And,
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's cool. See, that's helpful. What about you, Matt? Are you you have the same similar flow? I mean, thinking about the stuff that you're doing, like doing these exotic workshops in Africa and different places like that, I would imagine that you're working through a tour guide company to help you with that stuff, or am I off base?
No, maybe I should be, but no, it's me. My wife also helps out sometimes, or often. Sometimes it gets ridiculous. You're looking at a connection, say, where was I? I can't remember. I think I was in Vegas and I needed to get to Laos, and it was either like a 48-hour trip or a $10,000 trip.
Oh.
So, well, screw it. I'm taking 2 days to get there.
Exactly.
That's just what it is. It's two options.
Yeah.
But I tend to use a website called Hipmunk. Have you heard of it? Like chipmunk
That's
without the C?
No, I'm writing that down.
It's pretty cool. They, if you say you want to go from here to here, it shows it all as like a bar chart showing flight, layover flight, and the start and finish times on a 24-hour sliding calendar. And it'll organize it by price or time or agony, which includes like the layover times. But so we'll look at that. And then if it's hotels or stuff, check. There's a couple of review sites that my wife's really good at checking the real traveler photos for me to see if they're what they say they are. But then wherever possible, I'll actually end up booking it through the airline's own website. Because when you need to make changes, it's a ball ache if you booked it through someone else and then you call up. Even JAL, who are all about service, they'll say, oh, you booked this with Expedia, you need to call Expedia.
Yeah.
And Expedia will charge you $75. And Expedia owns everything. They also own hotels.com and this and that. So it's if you booked it through the airline itself or even the hotel's website itself, although I never do that because you want the points, then it's a lot easier when you need to make a change, which we do.
Any secrets from either of you on getting? I don't know what's the best way to phrase this question. So if you're booking a hotel through one of these services like Expedia or Travelocity or something, and you're trying to do the hotel thing, and it's like, oh well, this hotel right here is completely booked up, and then you call the hotel and they're like, yeah, we got 3 rooms available, or vice versa. Yeah, how do you circumvent that? Is it best to just always go directly to the hotel or not? What do you guys think, Lee?
I think start with the hotel. So sort of start with the hotel and see what's available.
Do your homework.
That's the thing. It's one of those, you can have it fast, you can have it cheap, you can have it good. Pick two. And in this case, you're going to end up doing quite a lot of legwork if you want to get the best deal kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you need to look at, when I'm looking at flights, I'll look at Skyscanner, I'll look at Expedia, I'll look at Kayak, I'll look at, quite a few different ones. Most of the time, they're all giving you the same stuff, but every now and again, some sort of deal comes up. But I think Matt's point of if you ever need to make changes, booking directly makes life a lot easier. I think that's worth, $30-40 a night or something like that if it's a hotel or things like that. The older I get and the more I charge my clients, the more I'm kind of like, I'd rather pay and make my life easier. So where possible, it's not like, I'd like to save money as much as the next person, but I'm a big believer, you get what you pay for. So, if it's going to cost a little bit more, but it's going to make my life easier and I can afford it, I'll go that route.
Yeah. The opposite is what gets me riled up is when you go into a situation with that mindset, Lee, and you're like, you get what you pay for, I'll pay a little bit more, and then you end up getting less.
Oh, absolutely.
That puts me, that drives me off the cliff right there. Guys, there's a ton of stuff to talk about in here. You see the notes here. I wanted to talk about night excursions. Like, do you turn the photographer part of your brain off? I want to talk about laundry. How do you manage that? Security. I also wanted to put in here, which is not in the notes, I wanted to talk about points and how you guys manage that and these point systems, and because that's a whole nother world. So I want to invite both of you guys back at some point in 2019, within the next couple of weeks, if you're up for it, to do a part 2 of this show where we tackle those topics. If you guys are, at a location where you have bandwidth. That's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. I want to mention 2 little points that sort of I made in my own notes. A couple of things to research that people may not think about. Number one, visas. Do you need a visa to travel to the country you're going to? And how soon do you need to apply for that visa? And have things changed? So, for example, the US has got the ESTA visa, which you can apply online, which is pretty straightforward. Not for all countries, but a lot of countries. They've just changed the rule now that if you need to apply for that, you need to apply 72 hours in advance. Yeah. Whereas before, you could just apply at the airport if you forgot. So little things like that. Do a bit of research and also learn a little bit about the language and the culture of where you're going. At the very least, learn how to say please, thank you and, like, excuse me and hello.
And where's the bathroom?
Photo.
Yeah.
Yeah, photo. Think, just get, even if it's just 5 phrases, just learn a couple of 5 phrases, because you'd be amazed how much nicer people are to you and how many doors it can open if you just show that you're putting in a little bit of effort to learn a little bit about the language and also the culture. Like, some things that you may not realize are offensive could be very offensive to other cultures. Yeah. So just do a bit of Googling before you go for stuff like that.
Well, I wonder, and this is before we leave this, on that same topic for both of you guys, there's these apps out now that do translations both on printed form and verbally. You can say, hey, where's the bathroom? It'll speak it into whatever language you want. Have you guys experimented with those apps that do the real-time translation?
Matt?
I have used the Google Translate one, but you need a connection. And right. I had seen other ones and actually got invited by a company that made one that was, I think it basically had all of that built into a little device, maybe this kind of size, that then offline could do all the translation. I don't know how it managed to detect your voice without, it must have a huge database in there. And I didn't know what I thought of it. But when I was recently in Japan, one of the ryokans I was staying at, the lady had one. And it was actually pretty dope. And I've seen other people using them. And in some situations, it's actually an incredible icebreaker for people like, what is this little box talking to me? and of course, it'll get some things wrong. But then that, again, getting people to break into laughter is a great icebreaker. Yeah. And often what you were saying, Lee, trying, and even if you screw up and say the wrong word that means something a bit silly, will then get them to just volunteer to walk you to wherever you're going to keep chatting with the funny tourist.
Yeah, the funny tourist with the talking box. What about you, Lee? Have you experimented with those universal translators?
Yeah, I've tried Google Translate, and I'll just sort of second most of what Matt said. It sort of gave me another thing that I remembered. I'll put a link in the show notes of a website that I find really useful. It's a wiki for all the different phone contracts all around the world. So you can just put in what country you want to go to, and there's a whole bunch of information in terms of these are the carriers, these are the prepaid things you can buy, this is how much data is going to cost you, don't buy it at the airport, buy it here, buy it there. That website has been invaluable for me for getting a SIM card wherever I end up going.
That's cool. I made a note. I'm going to put that on the list of questions for the next part 2 of this topic. And that's, I want to talk about the cellular situation, data, visas, all that stuff. So that's going to be a chunky show. Mm-hmm. I want to remind the folks that are watching this live that you can participate in the chat. We're on YouTube live right now. So go ahead and post your question in there, and we'll get to the Q&A, or the listener/watcher Q&A segment in just a few minutes. Our community manager, Christopher Berry, is in there collating the questions and copying them out into a Google Doc that we are all looking at right now. So if you have a question, go ahead and pop it in there, and we'll get to it shortly. So let's move right along, guys. So the third part of this show is the Picks of the Week. I'm reinstituting the Picks of the Week segment. It's one of our most popular segments on This Week in Photo, and we stopped doing it for a couple of weeks there. But I'm bringing it back for this last show of 2018 and all of 2019. So you guys are the first ones to be able to do Picks of the Week again on this week in Photo. So let's dive into that. So Matt, you've got a couple of picks of the week. Why don't you walk us through what your picks are?
I did, and I'll be honest, I was a little bit lazy because I just put together my best and worst gear of the year for 2018 and put that out on Monday. So I thought it makes sense to do that. And to be honest, I couldn't remember if I meant to pick something I'm loving this week or what the criteria was. So I just thought, let me name what I said were the cameras of the year.
No, that's
so for the general, your average punter looking for an all-around camera, something for travel, great image quality, decent price, portable, blah, 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 I picked out the Fuji X-T3. It's pretty incredible. There's one or two little things, but no camera gives you everything, especially not for $1,500. And a very personal one I chose as my favorite, personally the one I most enjoyed shooting with, not the one that I think is suitable for the whole market, but was, to my surprise, the Leica M10P. I don't shoot that much. I know it's a bougie choice. It could almost, if I had shot with another camera that was released this year that had that mechanical interface, it could have been that, because I do love the image quality coming off the camera and the 50mm that I was using in Bhutan, but it sounds really romantic. But wandering around for 2 weeks with this beautiful, handmade, I don't know if it's handmade, but mechanical feeling camera, and the experience of seeing a great scene and physically pulling it into focus. This is probably nothing for a filmmaker.
Also, I'm not a dentist, so I can afford one.
Yeah, I'm looking at that price. $8,000. $8,000 for that body.
Hey, don't kill my buzz. Let me finish my romantic anecdote. Jesus.
Hey, Frederick, okay, I pay that for a lens.
So as I...
Go ahead, man.
You're sorry. Okay, so as I'm, reminiscing on my wealth and how many cavities I filled this year, it was just a beautiful experience shooting it, and it was what I fell in love with photography. It wasn't before I became, really serious about photography. Before it was my income source. It wasn't about just the result. It was the process of shooting that I actually loved, the being out with a camera in my hand, taking pictures for the joy of taking pictures rather than to get the shot for a client to do this, to do that.
Yeah.
And forgetting about all of the speed and all of those things and just focusing on what was beautiful to have in my hands, that camera was it for me for the year. So to the 3 dentists watching, run out.
Yeah, exactly.
Might be a couple of plastic surgeons as well.
Wow, those Leica prices always get me. That is just, I'm like, is that right? Is that $8,000? It is $8,000 for that. But yeah, and for people that love that Leica look and the romanticism, like you say, Matt, of Leica, that's an easy price to fork over for those 3 dentists out there that are shooting. All right, well, cool. Those are perfect picks of the week. Matt or Lee Herbet, what are your picks of the week?
I could have had tons, but I thought what I'd do is I would talk about a new toy. I've started shooting a lot more 4K and 4K RAW recently, which is great, some beautiful footage and so on, but it requires a lot of storage and it requires fast storage. And I've got tons of solid state drives on my desk, but even those are not quite big enough for some of my projects. And so what I did is I've invested. Please note, I didn't buy or treat myself. It was a business investment.
Yeah, that's in wife speak right there.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, you invest in tools, you buy toys. So this is a tool, not a toy.
Yes, this is a tool. This is a tool. So I've invested in a G-Tech Shuttle XL EV. And what it basically is a very big box that you put lots of hard drives in. And it's a RAID array. So you to the power of one, you put all these drives together and they act as a single drive and they're super fast, plugs in via Thunderbolt 3. The EV part of it it's got these 2 extra little bays in there where you can put sort of almost whatever you want in it. I shoot a lot of stuff with my Adamus recorders, so I've got little bays for my Adamus cards. So I just take the solid state that I've recorded my footage on, chuck it straight in there, download it straight on, and away I go, and I'm editing in no time.
Wow.
And I mean, technically, I suppose they want to make you think that it's portable because it's got a handle, but it's about half as portable as the G5 Power Mac, if anyone remembers those.
It kind of looks like that a little bit.
Yeah, it does look a little bit like that. So it's about half the size, about half the weight, but that's still a little bit chunky. But again, I wouldn't fly with it. They do make a Pelican case for it. So, again, if the client was paying, I would have 3 of these on a shoot, and 1 would be my main one, and then 2 would be backups. But for now, it's just fine for all my.
That's actually really funny because right now I'm using the Pelican case from my one as a footrest.
Oh, look at that!
So it exists. There you go.
They are so good. That's a great pick.
That is a great pick.
Crazy fast.
Yeah,
I need
to
faster than an
that.
SSD.
I need to rethink that, like we were talking about before we went live. I need to rethink that my storage situation for the new year, because it is. I have a feeling that there's a storm coming. Winter's coming for my data, and I need to be ready for it. So.
Can I just point out that I didn't shit on your choice and say how expensive it is, even though it costs as much as a Leica. I was just supportive. Just making a note of that.
Yeah, you're a better human being than me, and I'm okay with that.
That's classic. Very good.
I'm more fun at parties.
True, I don't get invited. But on your point about the portable ones, they do also make a mini one that uses SSDs, yeah, which is even more expensive, but then fully portable.
You'd have to get 2 dentists to buy that one for you.
Yeah. But data, I mean, you can't put a price on safeguarding your data. And
well, they have, but yes.
Well, they have. Yeah. They
$6,000.
absolutely have. But, I think it's an easier pill to swallow, than... I'm not crapping on Leica. I love Leica. But, the price of $8,000 versus... $8,000 when you can buy other devices that arguably would do a similar job to that Leica for a fraction of the price versus something that is going to be a tank for your data, or using that money to go on a trip or take one of your workshops, you gotta weigh that.
But you got to admit, I will even admit that Leica is a lot sexier than a box of hard drives.
Until you lose your data, until you lose all the shots that Leica took, right?
You're so much more responsible.
Yeah, and also I will obviously point out that this is 24 terabytes, but that is being backed up every night onto 2 separate Synologies and a third one off-site. So
wow.
Everything's on there, but it gets backed up to 2 places here and 1 place somewhere else.
So Lee, is all that preparation for doomsday because you're just being diligent, or have you been hurt before and you're like, this is never going to happen to me again?
There are 2 kinds of hard drives in the world, those that have failed and those that haven't failed yet.
Yeah. That's what they tell me about motorcycle riders.
Yeah.
I was actually going to say that when you were mentioning you need to get your stuff in order, Frederick. There's no backup unless you have an offsite backup. Yep. So if he had all that great stuff and it's all in one house, and sorry, touch wood, his house burnt down, he doesn't have a backup. Yeah. So if you do that, we could even set up a little raid where I send you a terabyte and you send me a terabyte, so it's backed up on different coasts or something, because that's really how you want to do it, you need to have it offsite as well.
Yep.
And a 24 terabyte, and I think they go up to 80 with that G-Tech. It sounds like a lot, but I don't know about, as a filmmaker, you're probably way more, but I can bring back a terabyte from one trip.
I'm creating, on average, like on this documentary that I'm working on at the moment, we're creating a terabyte a day.
Oof.
Jeez.
Oh,
yeah. Remember the days when a terabyte was not even like in the lexicon?
And you know what's sad? Like, I'm creating a terabyte a day, and that doesn't even feel like a lot anymore to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank God for Thunderbolt 3.
Yeah. The petabyte. It's going to be petabyte next, right? Is that the next size up that we're going to skip to?
Yeah.
Craziness. All right, I have a pick too, guys. So Santa brought me a nice new toy, and it is this guy here, the Osmo Pocket. So I just got this thing yesterday. I've had it for about 24 hours, maybe 30 hours. And playing around with this thing, I saw it when it came out, and I was like, you know what, Osmo Pocket, those are cool. I had one of the previous edition Osmos, and for those that don't know what an Osmo is, it is a gimbal stabilized camera that allows you to do sort of fluid, albeit I'm holding up quote fingers, cinematic type video, stabilized video. In the case of the Osmo Pocket, from the palm of your hand. So it's pretty cool. So when I saw it, I was thinking, you know what, I got this iPhone I spent all this money on. It's got image stabilization in it. Do I really need this? Plus, I have an older Osmo. So I was going to skip it. Santa gave me one, and I decided that I can't believe I didn't get this thing. It's actually really, really cool and impossibly small. I was riding around and just sort of walking around the neighborhood today playing with it, and I was blown away by the footage that came out of this thing. But there are a couple of caveats. So the 2 main caveats that I found so far, like I said, I've only had it for a day. 2 main caveats are, 1, the omission on launch. Maybe they'll add this in firmware, but it does not stream live to YouTube or Facebook like all of the other DJI products do. This one, for some reason, does not connect to DJI, and this plugs into your phone the whole 9 yards. So there's really no excuse for it not to stream. To Facebook or YouTube, but it doesn't. So that's the one thing that got me. And the second thing that got me was, other than their sort of crazy Orwellian setup process, was the fact that it doesn't have the quarter 20 thread on the bottom of it for you to connect it to something. You have to plug it into your camera and then use one of those janky phone tripod mounts to, allow it to piggyback on your phone in order to stabilize it if you want to do that. And see, those two things seem like huge oversights to me, either oversights or opportunity for Osmo Pocket version 2. So
yeah, it's the Pocket Pro.
Yeah,
but
Pocket Pro.
I mean, it has a tiny screen, right? So maybe they're saying don't use your phone, or is the screen usable?
The screen is surprisingly usable, especially in selfie mode. So you can frame yourself and all that, but it has face detection and object detection. So
60p?
60p. It will automatically frame you, 4K 60p. So it will automatically frame you up and stay on you no matter where the camera is, that was the magical part for me, because I'm like, okay, this is cool. I could, as a content creator, you can do a crap load of work with just this little thing that goes into a slot in your bag. So I was blown away by that. But then, the other piece of it are the other modes in there that clearly were sort of appropriated from their drone technology world or the drone departments, and that's things like being able to do panoramas and stitch them together, doing motion time lapses and all that sort of stuff. They built all that technology into this little tiny thing that can go in your back pocket. So I'm still playing with it. I'm going to do a little review on it, but right now I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. And I wouldn't have bought it. Like literally, I would not have purchased that thing had Santa Claus not purchased it for me.
Oh, thank you, Santa.
Yeah, thank you, Santa. So that is my pick of the week. All right, guys, let's dive into the listener Q&A real quick. We got a couple questions that have come in from the folks in the chat. The first question up is from Trevor, and Trevor Panaki says, in your experiences, which camera or cameras offer the best support for getting, I think he's going to say gear replaced or repaired when you're traveling locally or internationally? Matt, you want to take that? Which camera company do you work with that has the best sort of repair or return program?
I would hate to generalize, to be honest, because out of big cities in major markets, I wouldn't depend on any of them at all. Mm-hmm. If I was in Arkansas, I wouldn't expect that Nikon can get me a loaner in 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And this sounds kind of conceited, but I sometimes get really helped out of binds, but I wonder if it's because I'm a Nikon Pro member or a Sony Pro member or whatever, or because they know who I am and they're trying to help me out.
Yeah.
Because I hear all the time from people, like when I was in Japan in March, my 200 f2 stopped focusing, and I had taken it to photograph the snow monkeys, and I really wanted to use that particular lens. And I reached out to them, and they got their guy in Tokyo to help me out with a loaner, and I shared it. Extremely grateful, and I'm still extremely grateful. But then I just got a bunch of people writing back saying, I tried, and no one even answered me for a week.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So I don't know. I really don't think there is one. A rental house, and again, this is out of the realm of a lot of people, I realize, but having a backup for critical things, and it could be like Lee said, of if my 50 prime died, then I've got the 24-70, or I've got this camera with a fixed lens that I could use as a backup. If it's something that, if that dies, the game is over, you need a backup for it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You could use the Leica as a backup.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, he's not going to let that go, are you? I love that.
I like a Leica.
I like a Leica too. What about you, Lee? I mean, you have a favorite support company?
I'm gonna try and find some wood to touch. Fortunately, I've never really had to get anything repaired on an emergency scale where I'm sort of out in the middle of nowhere. I've had buttons and stuff fail on a couple of cameras, and I've just sort of sorted out when I get back. Yeah. I'm just going to agree with Matt and say, if you're out of a major center, just logistically, they don't have that kind of stuff in place. So it's worst comes to worst. I mean, like I was a bit of a random story. I was helping a friend out a couple of weeks ago, actually the day after I landed back from Hong Kong. I was helping out a friend shoot a funeral of all things, and there were some logistic challenges, and we had to get a shot of this particular thing happening, and my camera wasn't in the car, whatever. I jumped out and shot it with my phone.
Wow.
So in a pinch, it's just get the shot, so yeah.
That's kind of my motto when I'm on location. I'll omit the swearing, but this isn't a fashion show. Let's just get the job done. So you had a question about cell phones, and actually in even my sponsored highest end videos, I mean, it's still pretty amateur hour, my field tested videos, it is a mix of drones and 4K this and that. And then it's sometimes 1080 that I've upscaled and you can't tell the difference on YouTube. And it is sometimes a phone and it is sometimes ... And often you can't tell. Sometimes maybe you can, but, you got to get the shot.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I want to definitely dive into that in that part 2 of this show, because that's important, because the cell phone technology and the rapid development of that world is changing a lot of the ways that we do. I would argue the ways that we pack as well. Like you're saying, it's a perfect backup camera. If you're in a pinch and all your stuff is stolen, but you got your phone in your pocket, you can still do some work. You can still get some work done. All right, Trevor has another question. He says, is there a tipping point for traveling with batteries? I know at one point they were almost considered weapons, and I have a ton. What do you guys do when you travel?
First of all, look up the policy of the airlines, because different airlines will have different policies in terms of how many you can take and what wattage and all that kind of stuff. Matt was saying he really likes Cathay. Cathay is one of the best. They allow you to take up to 20 batteries in your carry-on.
Wow, okay.
Whereas I've been on other airlines where they've been like, no, you can't take more than 2. So definitely do your research. And what I try and do is I try and give myself an hour, maybe 2 hours worth of grace of battery runtime, so that if my battery should last, I need 8 hours of shooting, I've got 10 hours worth of batteries, but I don't take more than that, because otherwise, as Trevor says, it gets to a tipping point, and quite literally, if they're in your backpack, you will be tipping over.
Yeah. What about you, Granger?
It's tricky, and Lee's absolutely right, but sometimes you just get shafted. I was flying from, I can't remember where, maybe Australia to London via the Middle East, and nothing against our Middle Eastern friends, but I have a personal rule of not going to countries where my embassy can't help me out, because I tend to get in trouble. And it was my first time transiting in the airport, and I can't remember, it was from one country to the next. The policy was batteries had to be carried on, and at the next one, they had to be checked in. So my luggage was transiting straight through. I didn't see it. I only had my carry-on, and I know this sounds excessive, but I was going to teach a flash photo workshop, 200 brand new rechargeable batteries worth, I don't know, $1,000. And they just said, well, you can't carry them, and you can't go to your luggage to check them in, so they're going in the trash.
Wow.
And what can you do? I mean, so my rule of not going, and then within 20 minutes, I was in the airport security talking to an armed police officer, arguing, give me back my batteries. And
yeah.
All right. Well, Matt,
I've got a horror story as well, but for another time.
Well, Matt, I wouldn't be a good podcast host if I let this go by, because you said you kind of snuck this in here that you only go to countries where there's an embassy from your home country because you tend to get in trouble. You got to elaborate on that, man. What are you doing? What the heck are you doing that you need an embassy to help you get out of it? What's going on?
I make poor life choices. What can I say? I am culturally respectful. I do try my very best to fit in with cultural norms, but this was more back, 5 years ago. I was shooting a fair few nudes in public, and I was shooting books for that. And, there's some places that you will get a fine. There's some places you'll go into prison and you can't get ambassador support.
Ooh. Yeah.
To not tempt fate, I just don't go there. And if there's a chance I can get locked up for having a glass of wine on the street, well, I shouldn't be drinking on the street, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's a big old world, and there's a lot of places I want to see where I can have less fear for my stupidity catching up with me.
I'm putting that on the list for the next show for sure, because we gotta talk about that.
There's more to that story.
I know there's more to that story. I felt your tap dancing in there. All right, Christopher Berry, our community manager, says, "What's the best way to insure your gear in case of accidents or theft when traveling? What companies do you recommend?" And I know Chris is speaking from personal experience. He had something unfortunate happen to him on a recent trip. What do you guys recommend in terms of making sure you can't get your gear back if something happens, like it gets stolen? Your chances are you're not going to get it back, but at least you could get some restitution for it. What do you recommend?
I've actually got like a specialist insurance broker that specializes in the film industry. Mm-hmm. So it costs me a bundle. But roughly it costs me about $2,500 a year, and that insures about $70,000 worth of gear, but that covers me internationally. So the only thing I have to do is that if I'm going to be shooting on water, I've just got to call them up and say, hey, I'm going to be shooting on water next week in Galapagos Island or whatever. And they're like, okay, cool. We've got you sorted for that. Nice. And thankfully, I've never had to make a claim, but a friend of mine who recommended them has had to make a claim, and he said they were fantastic. Like, there was no messing around, no issues to deal with. Like, within 2 days, he was like, yep, go to this place, go buy another one. And it's all sort of covered. They've got one for you to pick up. Nice. So, again, insurance is one of those things where don't cheap out, because I've heard some horror stories where people have gone with like the cheaper option, and then when something happens, it's 6 months to a year if they get a resolution before they get a resolution. Yeah, it's like buying a really expensive car, going on a road trip, and then cheaping out on the tires or not getting a spare tire because it was too expensive, right? You want to have a level of insurance. Matt, what about you? How do you handle insurance when you're abroad?
So a disclaimer, because I know Trevor, who's asked a couple of questions, he follows me and has probably seen me dodge this question for 5 years. I always avoided it because I don't want to tell people use this company, they've been good, and then they get screwed. Because I'm not speaking for the company. I'm not a part of the company. I have no idea. I haven't even read all the terms and conditions of my own policy, so I'm no expert. But for a lot of people, in covering your gear through your home or auto insurance is the best option. If you're not a pro, you can get it. A lot of my friends have home insurance that gives them accident and international coverage on their gear, and it's just over a certain dollar value. They have to specify it and give serial numbers. My first year in the States, so again, this is a one-off. I don't want to be done for libel, but I signed up with the Professional Photographers of America. If you become a member, because you can be anywhere in the world. What is just said? I
think your mic just changed.
Yeah, your mic just changed. We can still hear you though. Oh, now your mic is gone. We lost you.
Hello.
There you are.
You're back.
Now you're back.
So you asked me what headphones I was wearing. They just disconnected and reconnected. Maybe it's the insurer hacked me or something. Yep. I'm sorry about that. You don't have to be American, and you don't have to really be a professional to be a member of Professional Photographers of America Association. You just have to pay the annual fee. And then they have an insurer that they use that will only insure to their members. And the policy was okay. It was okay. I had a claim with them. They paid it, but then I won't go into details in case I get the specifics wrong. But there was some messing around, and they didn't end up following through on what they had given me in writing they would do, and I only got kind of 60% of what I should have been covered for. So I've now moved to one in the States that's called TCP. I got that because a lot of professionals that I know use it, and they said the customer service is great and they're really upfront and clear. And my experiences so far, I've been dealing with Cindy there. She's been lovely and so helpful, but our exchange so far has been me giving them money and never making a claim. So I can't vouch for how the approval process is. But like when I got some new equipment, I wrote to them and said, I need to add this to the policy. And they bound me and insured it on the day, even though it took a week for me to actually make the payment and everything. They said, from today, that's covered. Nice. Which I think is pretty great, that in 2 hours, I gave them the serial number, told them the gear, I was insured. And, you pay the extra, but basing it off what Lee was saying, he pays for 70 grand and 2.5. This seems cheaper than that. I think for about 70, it might be like 1.5 US. So
Nice.
that's about two and change Australian dollars.
Australia is expensive. What can I do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Come to New York.
Yeah. Exactly. I was going to say.
Bring a jacket.
Try New York.
I'll take it up with the wife.
Yeah. There you go. All right, guys, next question, another one from Chris. I think this one's directed at me. He says, is the Osmo camera open to being used with iOS, Android apps like Filmic Pro or ProCam? And I'll say that no. So far, my experience with the camera, and like I said, this is the caveat is I've only had it for a day or so, but it will only work with DJI's app, and they ship an app with it called Mimo, which is strange because you would think another DJI camera would just work with the DJI Go app ecosystem that they've already built for all their other devices, but not this one. It has its own specific app called the Mimo app, which kind of leads me to believe, which is why it doesn't support streaming to YouTube or Facebook because they haven't built it into this brand new app yet. But to answer your question, Chris, no, it does not. As far as I know, it doesn't support any other apps other than the ones that you download for it, or the one that you download, and that's called Mimo. All right, next question is from Craig Stamfley. This one's to you, Matt Granger. He says, Matt, are you ever going to return to Australia? What is going on, expat?
Oh, I've been called out. Gracious. It's Boxing Day. Just chill your boots.
Not in Australia.
Yeah, well, only in Australia, because Americans have never heard of Boxing Day.
No, you got me right
it's
there.
a Commonwealth thing. So, yes, I mean, this is the first Christmas that I've been in the States. Last year we came back for Christmas and New Year. I'll be back. It's my dad's, will he be embarrassed if I say the year? A big birthday for my dad next year, and there's a couple of other family things, so I'm hoping to get back for that. But in terms of moving back, I'm sure I will at some time. Let's see how long the government honors my visa over here, and it might be based on that in the end.
Very good. There you go. All right, well, look up Craig Stamfley when you get back home. You go check him out.
Okay.
All right, next question is from Steven Valera. Steven says, have you guys tried the 7 Artisans 51.1? And what do you think of Chinese branded lenses?
Well, I'll cover the second part. I've got no idea what that first one is.
Neither do I. I don't know. Yeah.
I presume it's a lens.
I'm guessing it's a lens, but it's one that I've never heard of and don't use. So you want to take the second part, Lee?
Yeah, so I actually, I'm actually a big fan of SLR, which are based in Hong Kong. I don't know if you guys have seen their lenses or done any of...
Is that SLR Magic?
SLR Magic, yes, sorry. Yeah, so I picked up one of their lenses a little while ago during some B&H sale, and it was, for the price, I was really impressed. And I've picked up a set of primes from them for like little cine primes. Mm-hmm. Again, disclosure, I know Andrew, who runs SLR Magic. I paid for them with my own cash money, but I do know the guys, and they're all lovely. So yeah, I don't know about other brands, but the SLR Magic ones, I like what I've used so far.
There you go. All right. What about you, Matt? Any thoughts on Chinese branded lenses?
First off, I have the 1.1 here at the moment, the 7 Artisans one.
Oh, you do? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a Leica M mount. I think they're now bringing. Maybe they have it for Sony E mount as well. It's a $370 f1.1 lens.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
Okay.
That's where you make up the money at, right?
Boom. $8,000 camera, $300 lens.
Cheap tires.
It's not bad for the money. I mean, for the money, it's not bad. The Summilux is $4,000 for the Leica f1.4. You can get a Voigtlander 1.1 for about $1,000 ish. So it's a third of the price of the next cheapest one. It's probably better as a cinema lens where you're not holding focus for ages and studying a single frame. So it's not super sharp. Mm-hmm. It's not super contrasty, especially wide open, but by about f2, it's not bad. For the money, I think it's pretty good, and the build is good. But I think people have to move past the idea of just Chinese products are no good, full stop. This is it. this is a Chinese product.
It
My
is.
laptop is a Chinese product.
Shenzhen.
Your headphones.
Yeah, I mean, most consumer electronics. Yes, I've had bad experiences with some Chinese products and some Chinese companies, and business practices vary country to country. But I've also had shitty experiences with German and American and Australian made stuff. So again, it kind of comes down to you get what you pay for. If you're complaining that a $200 Chinese lens isn't as good as a $4,000 German one, well, no shit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And that's absolutely it. You hit it right on the head. You get what you pay for, and you know, trying to locate or geographically tie quality to one specific region, it's not going to work. You know, we get stuff from Vietnam that's excellent quality and stuff that's crap, right? So, you know, it's money. It's all about money. All right, moving on. Next question here is from Chris Berry again. He says, "How delicious was that red you poured?" Who's pouring red? Was that you, man?
I think it was both of you.
It was really nice.
I was drinking my red off camera. I was making sure the camera wasn't on me.
No, I saw it.
So you guys saw it. You guys
saw it. I don't even know what it was.
Yeah, it's gone now.
I chose it because our bottle shop nearby, the staff write really cute descriptions of the wine, and this one just was funny and in my range, so I bought it. But no, it's nice. I can't tell you anything about it, though. It's red.
All right, well, since both of you guys are on the show, what's that wine I have there? There's this wine, is it called 99 Crimes or something Crimes? Have you heard of that wine? It is. I
don't drink, so I'm sorry, I'm not.
Well,
not good
okay.
here.
There's a method to this madness. I want to say it's something. It's a number crimes anyway, but the labels are most of the labels for the different sort of vintages of wine are illustrations or photographs from different criminals that did time in Australia. And
I just Googled it.
And there's a lot of those.
And if you download the app that goes with it, and if you hold you run the app as a camera, hold it up to the label in augmented reality animates on the label, cool. and the these are like from 1700s or whatever. They'll tell you about their crime, and why they did it and all this stuff. And so it's sort of a little cool. Easter egg for each of these bottles of wine. So.
Sounds like an interesting way to cover for poor winemaking.
It's not bad.
Like, oh, look at this criminal talking. This tastes like piss, but sure. The bottle's talking.
Pay no attention to this. Drink up.
That's not the wormwood.
What is cheap wine, too? It's like $15 a bottle.
Three stories in, you're not going to taste how bad it is.
You guys, wine snobs. I have no idea I barely know how to drink wine. All the swirling, all that stuff. So, No,
you're just an app addict. It's got nothing to do with wine. You like it because you can download another app.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It makes my choice easy because I'm sitting and we have Bevmo here in California, beverages and more, and I'll go in there to buy wine and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing in here. Okay, that one looks good.
I'll get that one.
Oh, this one has an app? I want that one. That's kind of how it happens. All right, guys, we are at the end of another episode of This Week in Photo. Thank you to everyone who participated, especially you two, Chris Berry, who's holding down the chat room, and all the folks that are in the chat room participating. And if you're listening to this after the fact and watching on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, a like, all that stuff. And subscribe to the MP3 podcast over on thisweekinphoto.com/subscribe, and you can make sure you get at least the audio of this show. Plus, of course, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. Matt Granger, if the TWiP audience is looking for where to find you, I know we said off the top of the show, mattgranger.com/workshops and mattgranger.com/win, I think it was, for the contest. Any other places you'd like people to go?
Just YouTube, but they'll find me. That's all. That's good.
Yeah, you're prolific with your. What are you up to? Like 750 million followers right now on YouTube, something like that.
I think it's closer to 1 billion, but yeah.
Sorry, don't be offended. No, thank you for coming on, man.
Don't pay for themselves. My pleasure.
It's always a pleasure chatting with you, seriously, and I hope to have you on more in 2019 if you're up for it.
Love to.
All right. Well, we're got to do part 2 of the show, so there's that right there. All right, Lee Herbet, what about you, man? If you want people to catch up with you and follow you, where should they go?
Well, my website is capture.inc, so that's capture.ink. C was taken. And on all of the socials, I am Lee Herbet, so Leeherbet, only one R in her bet.
Herbet. Yeah, it took me a while to get that, but I got it now.
Yeah. And if people can at me, actually, I've got a little question for the TWiP Army. I'm thinking of doing video tours, like photography tours, and I'm thinking how that'll be structured slightly differently to the way photography ones go. And I'm interested how many people would be interested in doing something like that. So if people are interested or they have suggestions, just come at me, and I'm open to feedback and suggestions.
Awesome. All right. Cool. And thanks to you for coming on too, man. It's been way too long since you've been on the show. And
it has. It was about 10 or 15 kilos ago.
Yeah, something like that. Well, now you're back in the rotation, so welcome to the flow.
Good to be here.
All right.
Nice to meet you, Lee.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
too, mate.
I introduced. Look at that. TWiP bringing people. I connected two Australians together. How does that even happen? That's amazing.
We're going to end up on a wine label one day. My story will start. It all started when I met Lee on Frederick's show.
It was downhill from there. Right,
find me an embassy.
You guys are fantastic.
Oh, shit.
Thank you to both of you guys, and thanks to all the folks that participated in the chat, etc. And you know how we end these shows. Thanks for joining us. It is time to take that lens cap off. And ending the